Okay, so we're going to record a training video on how to edit the Memory Jogger files, PowerPoint files. So I'll show you where they are and then how to open them and then how to make the few changes that we need to make to each of these before we can actually compile them. So you should find the same information, maybe in a slightly different place on the Surface Pro. All right, so let's get started. We'll open Windows Explorer, and we'll look for Dropbox, and then we'll look for Leonardo Group folder. And under Leonardo Group, if you scroll down, there are a lot of folders here, but there's one called Memory Jogger Programs right here. So if you click on that, move this out of the way, then you'll see some folders underneath here. There are three main Memory Jogger programs. Lean Leadership Workshop is the hospital program. Lean Material Workshop, that's the material management workshop, and then Mixed Model Line Design Workshop. So each of these three folders contains all the 50 memory joggers. So we're working on the Lean Leadership Workshop. I'll click on that, and we'll go to, we'll open up 50, you can see here, it's quite incredible, 50 short lessons. So I've already done 1 through 4, so let's work on 5 together, and you can see what I do. So if I click on Memory Jogger 5, let me explain what's in this folder. There are some PNG files. These are graphic files that are included in the presentation in some place or another. So we're just storing them here. This file that ends in quiz is a Articulate Quiz Maker file. So it has questions, and answers and stuff like that. Then we have 2 files here that have the extension INTR. That stands for interaction. So these are Articulate files that have some kind of interactive quality. They're like widgets, basically, that have various styles of interacting, like a folding, a fan that opens up, or a bulletin board where you click on different aspects, or a pyramid. So there are different interactions that are stored here. And then the main files are 2 of them. They have the same name. They need to have the same name. And this is called Memory Jogger Team Kaizen Steps, PPTX, so that's PowerPoint. And then there's another associated file, same name with the extension PPTA, and that is Articulate. So this is where Articulate stores things like audio tracks, special animations, all the settings for Articulate, but it needs to be named the same as this one. So, good. So here we go. What we're going to do is open this one. I'll just double click on it. It's going to open PowerPoint. And again, this should be the same in the Surface Pro. So it's opening it up. And I'm going to open it up full screen. Okay, so here we go. You can see these are not terribly long, and we're using interaction. So this one has an interaction, and then it has a quiz. All right, so here's what we're going to do. We're going to make a few editing changes, and then we'll save this. Let me back up for a second. When you're in here, before you open these files, one thing you should do, and this is kind of important, you'll notice that the PowerPoint file is 2 megabytes, 2.5, and the Articulate file is much bigger. It's 14,820. That's because the audio files are stored in here, audio tracks. But what you need to check on is to make sure that these are both stored locally on the local hard drive or solid state disk. And the way you can check that is you just right click on the file and go down to this option called Smart Sync. And what you're looking for is this check mark, local check. That means it is stored locally. If it's not stored locally, then you can click on this local button and get it to download. So local as opposed to being stored in Dropbox, only in the Dropbox, okay, because these are all Dropbox files. So that one's okay, and then if you open the PowerPoint file, it's also local. So we're okay with these, but make sure you check that, because if these are not stored locally, what can happen is this file, this PPTA file, gets erased. Because what happens is PowerPoint tries to open it, look for it, it doesn't find it because it's not local, and then it just creates an empty one, which is, you won't lose the file because it's stored in the Dropbox, but it's a hassle. So just make sure that these two files are stored locally before you open. Okay, so here we are, and here are some of the changes that I like to do for these files. It's not much, but I'll show you what I do. We want to identify this with the Memory Jogger number, and I like to center this. So I'm going over here and I'm centering this little title here. So that's one thing. Kaizen steps, that's all okay. But when I click on Kaizen steps, you'll notice here it says the font is Perspective Sans. And that font, it looks okay, but it sometimes compiles funny in Articulate. So what I'm going to do is go to Replace, and I'm going to replace fonts. And if I've selected that font, it's going to come up automatically here. But I want to replace Perspective Sans with Calibri. So if you just select C, it's going to find Calibri. It's the top of the C's. Select Calibri, and then say Replace. And Calibri looks pretty similar, but it compiles well with Articulate. Okay? So that's one thing I do. Okay, everything else. Oh, here on the last slide, it's just kind of a placeholder slide. It says, you know, you're now finished. You make that same change. And this thing, click on Exit to close. We don't need to have that. That's not actually true. So you can just delete this whole box. Just leave it blank. All right, so that's some of the simple editing. There's too much more to do there. Now, if you go up here to the menu, you'll see a menu option, Articulate, right? So this is the plugin, the Articulate plugin, and when you click on it, it gives you a bunch of options. And there are a couple options you need to change here in Articulate. So first one is we go to Player, and it's going to open the player settings. That's kind of the frame that you see when you run the lesson, you know, with the controls, etc. Now, if you have an older version of Articulate in PowerPoint, so it was created with a previous version of Articulate Presenter, would you like to upgrade it? So the answer is yes. You have to upgrade it, but it'll take the old file and put it into a backup file in the same folder. So you just click on Upgrade. It just takes not very long to upgrade. It puts it into the latest format. You'll probably have to do this for all of the PowerPoints. Probably from this point forward, they're all originally done in the older version of Articulate. Okay, so this takes not very long, and it'll come back. There we go. So done. Successfully upgraded and saved. Okay. So now we're working on the latest version of Articulate. And what I want to do is click on Player, this button right here. So again, the player is the frame in which it's running when you run the lesson. So here are some of the changes we need to make in the player. Exit is not something we're using anymore, so we unclick Exit. Notes is something that we want to have opened as the default. So you select Notes, and then you click on this up arrow, and it will move Notes to the top of the list, and that means that the Notes will show up as a default view for the player. Here, the title is fine, but let's put in Memory Jogger 5 here in the title, MJ5, just as a reminder. We don't need a logo, presenter. I don't think we need a presenter either, so take that out. Elapsed in total time, that's good. Volume, all that's good. All right, so those are the changes that I'm going to make here. Now, the other change is you click on Other, and the player size, most of these were done with this setting, lock player at optimal size. And what we want to do is change that to scale player to fill browser window. So it'll take maximum use of whatever browser the student is using. So let's change that to scale player to fill browser window. Okay, so I think that's all on the player. So you click on OK. So the final step, I'm going to do a separate video. But everything else should be ready to go. So all you have to do here is save the PowerPoint. All of these settings should be saved. All the articulate settings should be saved, and all the other changes you made. Or you can go to File, Save, and then close it. So that ends the editing part of this task. And you can double check that the dates are today's date and time, right, that it was all done. You can also verify this PPTA file is still large, so we didn't lose it, right? It's the original soundtrack. Okay, so that's it. I'm going to close out this video, and then we'll do one to how to compile using Articulate.